Welcome back, everybody. Ellis Cannon, joined now by Congressman Tim Murphy, of course, representing the South Hills, the PA 18th District, and has been here for a number of issues over the years. I consider him a friend and a friend of the show. Always enjoy our conversations, and certainly his efforts as it relates to mental health reform. The piece of legislation is entitled Helping Families in Mental Health Crisis Act, and we've got two really meaty segments with him. Always a pleasure, Congressman. Thanks for being aboard.
Great to be with you again.
Thank you, too. You get more positive movement the other day. The House Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee, which, of course, you're very familiar with, gives the okay for this in an 18-12 largely party line vote to move this to a full committee vote, which has not yet been scheduled. What is the meaning and impact of the vote of the other day?
This is a huge vote that the subcommittee moved forward, which allows the committee to work on this more and have a vote, and that's the step before it gets to the House chamber. We have not had a bill of this level of significance in reforming the mental health system in America since Kennedy was president, and arguably for decades before then. Because it reforms the system, because it shakes up the status quo, there's going to be a lot of people who want to protect the status quo. And because we recognize that the way we look at mental health in 2015 is very different than the way we looked at it in 1963, there's going to be a lot of people who don't understand where laws need to change. And there's going to be a lot of groups who are saying, I want to hang on to my status quo as well, and so they'll fight it. But the fact that we got it this far, and we held off 30-some amendments that were meant to weaken and water down the bill, is a very positive step. And along those lines, it's still a very strongly bipartisan bill. There's over 40 Democrat co-sponsors, 120 Republican co-sponsors. We've traveled the nation talking about this. We've met with many people. It's a strong bill. It's going to take a lot of work, though. It's not going to be an easy pass.
No, and it's not been an easy path to get to this point. I mean, I brought along some of my pieces from visits past, and I'm looking right here at a show that we might have done in June of 2014, and another one, I believe, earlier this year. We've had this discussion, and you've been fighting this battle for some period of time. So I suspect this win, as you point out, is very significant.
It is, but like whether you're playing the World Series or something else, it's the first game. There's other games you got to move forward on this. But I think a lot of what we've done here is accomplished as educated members of Congress of what serious mental illness is all about. We've many bills in the past that were just simple, like put some more money into this suicide prevention program or this program, but no one stopped to say, why does none of this work? I mean, we spend $130 billion a year in the area of mental health. Why are we still having so many suicides, so many homicides, so many homeless, so many people in jail? And the reason is because their system hasn't been reformed yet.
And this is truly an overhaul, and there's two major pieces to it that seem to jump out. One would be, if I can, using a layman's terms, you're the professional and practicing psychologist and Naval Reserve, and for that matter, obviously, a sitting member of Congress. So forgive me if I just talk like Joe Lunch, which I am. You want to loosen up HIPAA as it relates to folks that are particularly close to sick people. And you want to increase federal grants to courts and to states where judges can then take mandatory action. People may say you're giving them the license to institutionalize people. Talk about those two major pillars and how they shake out.
Yeah, I remember once Terry Bradshaw was asked by locker room reporters about a certain pass he threw, and they kept nagging him on that, and then he finally said, didn't we win the game? So we're talking about is about 5 to 10 pages out of a 130-page bill. So it's not a 10,000-page bill, but it is one that on two very, very important aspects. Let's take the second one first. What we're talking about is assisted outpatient treatment, where a judge can say to someone, under the circumstances where they've been involved in acts of violence, arrests, police involvement, and some hospitalization for mental illness, where when they are not in treatment, they keep deteriorating. It's something that 45 states and the District of Columbia have as laws, that the judge can say, you will stay in treatment. Now, notice, when people talk about rights, let's keep in mind, this is a judge saying this. This isn't some random man on the street. So it already is a procedure designed to take and protect someone's rights. But what's different about that is the standard that usually is there for inpatient care is they have to be in imminent danger of harming themselves or someone else. And so what frequently happens when families say, look, my son's doing these things, my daughter's doing these, all these problems occurring, they're in and out of jail, can we do something? When you look at cases like the guy who did the Navy Yard shootings, who was involved with the police, shot a tire, put a bullet through his apartment before, had been involved with the police, involved with the VA. And you're thinking, why wasn't this guy in some kind of outpatient care? Probably that situation would never have happened. You can pick apart any one of these number of these homicide cases, and you would find something. And tragically, what's more often occurring here is the suicide cases. But this is what the judge can do. All our bill would say is, if you have this in your community, you can apply for a grant to get some money to help pay for this process to start it up. We don't tell states they have to do it. We don't tell states they don't have to do it. Provide some funding. But what happens here is some people have taken that part and completely distorted and say we're taking away people's rights. We're not doing anything with their rights. As I said, it's a court process. Their rights are protected. But there are those out there who believe that under no circumstance should anybody ever be given involuntary outpatient or inpatient commitment.
And more particularly, the judges or the judicial branch should have that right.
Yeah, that's what they do. And I see this as totally fitting. But to those who still say no, I say, remember Adam Lanza who did the shootings at Sandhook Elementary School? Should he have been involuntarily committed? And I'd say yes. And some may say, well, I don't know, we didn't know these things. No, the question is, there was a lot known at that time, but there was a lot of walls occurring. And how about the Tucson shooter? How about at Santa Barbara campus? How about the guy, a theater in Aurora, Colorado? Should they have been involuntarily committed? In many cases, families were saying this person has problems. And at least to provide some outpatient care could have made a life and death difference.
I want to ask you a question that I've asked you before, though. In all of those cases, there's a second component to it, and it's obvious, and it's the use of a firearm. And whether accurate or not, this has been portrayed as a Republican response to what happened at Sandy Hook, when in fact the response should be broader and to also include guns. But we can get the guns, things go like this. Don't you have to have both to have a real full solution?
It's not what's in their hands, it's what's in their minds that we have to pay attention to. The stabbings at Franklin Regional High School was not a gun. The fact that of the 41,000 suicides in this country last year, it was done with rope as a noose, it was done with razor blades, it was done with a car crashing into a tree, driving into a lake, going head-on collision with someone else. It was the 43,000 drug overdose deaths. A lot of those were also suicides. If we only get caught up in the gun issue, we're missing the point. This is an opportunity to change things with mental illness, even though... No, I don't think about it should be one or the other. Well, most violent crimes, 90% of violent crimes don't involve a gun. The violent crimes that do involve a gun, about 2 to 3% of those are purchased legally. The rest is illegal. So, look, I believe that we ought to be enforcing those laws, and that's how you handle those things. But if you think that just by having some issues with regard to checking backgrounds. This is one of the important points, too. When people say they are against involuntary outpatient or inpatient commitment, here's the zinger there. If you have an involuntary commitment, your name goes on the list that you can't buy a gun. So if you are against involuntary commitment, you have no background. No background check. It's gone. So we're back to that point. If we really want to work to stop the person, and most people with mental illness are not violent, but at least for those who may have the propensity towards being that, even if they are not violent enough yet to put them in a hospital, to saying, isn't the more thing to help them? And I think so.
All right, we're going to continue with that. We have less than a minute to go, and I just want to highlight some additional aspects of the legislation. The bill addresses the shortage of inpatient beds for psychiatric patients, provides faster intervention for people with schizophrenia. As I mentioned earlier and in previous shows with the congressman, this is really about significant mental health issues. Creates a grant fund, a program for services of children with emotional disturbances, suicide prevention program, and more. So there are other aspects of it. We're going to come back. I want to talk about a couple of areas of pushback that the Democrats specifically had. Also take a look at what the Senate side has so that hopefully they can be reconciled in time and ultimately be signed by the President. We'll do that in 2 minutes on PCNC.